is finally cool enough to be able to plant bulbs, and I'm going to start out rather conservatively by planting some bulbs just in pots. Now I've got these two beautiful urns. These are actually part of my QVC collection, and I'm going to fill them with Party Punch Tulip mixture. These are a Brex bulb. I fell in love with this kind of yellowy orange, let me see right here, shades of orange, yellow, and red. It's one of the things that I love about Brex bulbs is they will tell you on the package itself how tall the bulbs are going to get, whether they're a mid to late bloomer. These are going to bloom mid to late spring, and how tall they're going to get, 18 to 24 inches. So this is an absolutely gorgeous blend of a color palette that I don't, heretofore I haven't used that much, but this year I'm doing this kind of vibrant yellow orange, kind of a reddish tableau in the potager because I think it's going to be distinctive, it's going to be unusual for me, and I'm trying something different that I haven't tried before. Though I have definitely used Brex bulbs before, and I know they are going to be very reliable. So what I'm going to do is a couple of things. First, I'm going to prep my pots. Now these pots were filled with some other things during the summer growing season. I have pulled it out. I most recently had some coleus in here, but I pulled it out. Now I'm going to fill this back up with dirt, and here's a tip, you guys. So what I did was I dumped all of the old dirt out, and then I just mixed it 50-50, the old dirt that had been in there, the old potting soil that had been in there, with some really new, beautiful potting soil. So I'm not wasting any of that old dirt, but I'm nevertheless still going to be getting my bulbs off to a really good start. Now these need to be planted about 6 inches deep, and I can easily accommodate that in this pot. I'm not really sure how many are going to fit in here. I'm going to guess. These come in packages of 25, so it makes it easy for me. I'm just going to kind of dump them in here and see how many I can fit. And I'm planting them, you guys, oh, you know, maybe an inch apart, maybe a little bit closer than I would in the ground. And I'm going to start on the outside and move to the center. Now, a couple of things that makes this easier. I do have garden gloves on. And I'm also, Stuart, if you can show, I'm working on my driveway. So to make it a little bit easier on my knees, I do have one of these cushioned pads, which if you've got arthritis in your knees, or you just don't want your knees to be exposed to that hard surface, then that's just very helpful. The other thing that I always like to have nearby, which makes cleanup so much easier, is just a whisk broom and a dustpan. Now these are going to be, I think, situated, at least in my head right now. I'm going to use just a few more, I think, in here. So that's 25, maybe I'm going to get about 30 in each container. So these are going to be at the entrance to the potager in the back, along right in front of those two posts that go into the potager. And then I'm also going to plant these in the potager itself as a border along the walkway. And I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So I think that looks pretty good. Notice that I am not using any additional fertilizer or anything, because all of the food it needs is in this wonderful little package. So now that I've got these in and in place, I'm just going to come back and cover it with some of my mixed dirt. And I can see that a lot of seed heads from my redbud trees have kind of hidden themselves in this soil. And notice that I'm also giving enough clearance so that I can get this pot watered. And by the way, these pots have excellent, excellent drainage, which is crucial to planting bulbs in containers, because the biggest, I think probably the biggest cause of bulbs rotting in containers is that they get too soggy, they get too wet, and they literally just turn to mush. And we don't want that to happen. So what am I going to do after this? Well, I am going to give them a good watering, and then I'm going to pretty much leave them alone, but I am going to cover them. Now you can cover these with almost anything, with a trash bag, with a tray, really pretty much anything, but this will keep any kind of pests and critters away, any digging squirrels or rodents, anything like that that might get into your storage area. Now for me, my storage area is my garage, and I will have, I don't know how many pots with bulbs that I am planting in them in my garage, so it will be pretty crowded. But these will be fine. They'll put out all sorts of root growth. I'll check them periodically, but I really doubt that I'm going to have to give them much supplemental water, if any. And then as soon as it's about time for them to bloom, or actually pre-bloom, but they start showing their little tips pretty aggressively, then I'm going to bring them out, expose them to the sunlight, and they will then bloom beautifully in these pots. So the key factors are, you want to make sure that they stay covered, that they're not overwatered, and that they're somewhat protected. Now some I put in the, most I put in the garage, where yes, it will freeze, but they'll get some protection. If I can't fit all of these pots in my garage, then I'll show you another area where they're kind of protected outside, and where I also ensure that they don't get overwatered. So that is my little rendition of how you plant tulip bulbs in pots. It would still hold true for any other kind of bulbs. I've got a bunch more Brex muscari and daffodils that I'm also going to be potting up in containers. But right now, I think that I have given these Party Punch tulips a really good head start in these gorgeous urns. Well, now that I've got my two containers with my Party Punch Brex tulips in it, I am going to plant, as I said, in the potager, in this border here that runs up and down, or alongside rather, my brick walk that I just redid this year. I am just going to dig a little trench here. Now, I'm doing this because I could use like an auger attached to my drill, but I think for this purpose, because I want them to be really pretty close together, I'm going to do it this way. So I've got a nice little trench that's about 6 to 8 inches deep. And then I'll plant these bulbs in here. And I have, Stuart said I was doing math in the garden. So I had, I think, about 175 remaining. So that tells me that along these 4 sections, I can plant about 43 in this section. So at least I know I'll have that many. It may not require that many, in which case I'll have a few extra to plant someplace else. Now, I could mingle the tulips in with the greens that I plan to have growing in the spring. Some lettuces, spinaches, chard, that kind of thing. But I don't want to do that because then I don't seem to get enough coverage of either. And these areas are very small. So that's why I'm doing it this way. So I'm going to plant them here, and then what I'll do is plant the remaining area with my greens and my spring things like radishes and maybe some peas. Okay, so right here, this is going to be, I think, 50. So let me see what this does. And I normally, you guys, don't plant tulips this liney. I typically like to have them grow in more of a, almost like a blooming shrub fashion. But in this case, I want them to be like little soldiers up and down the edge. So I'm going to plant these in here like this. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So see, 14, 15. So then I'm going to come 16, 17, 18, 19. Yes, I do know how to count. 21. So I'm definitely going to have some extra bulbs. And I think I know where I'm going to plant them then. Okay, so all I have to do then is cover up my trench. See how quickly you can plant bulbs when you do it this way? It's amazing, really. And I will, of course, water these in too. And this is where it's really handy, you guys, to have your little whisk broom. I might put another one down there at the end. So I think that ended up being about 30 to 35 bulbs. And I'm not real particular, you guys, as long as the bulk and the volume of tulips is approximately the same on each side, then that will be good. Okay, so I've got a few remaining. And now I'm going to go over and do this side, but I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to water it in really, really well. I did not use any kind of bulb food. All I have to do now is just wait for that bulb magic to begin, and I anticipate that next spring it's going to be absolutely glorious. So thanks Brex Bulbs for my Party Punch Tulip Mixture inspiration. Well, I want to give all of you an update on several things. First of all, I'm still kind of surrounded by the devastation from the ice storm. The huge mound of wood, branches, limbs, tree trunks that's in the front of my house will remain there until the city comes by to pick it up, or I have it taken away, and that's kind of indeterminate right now. I'm not sure what we're going to have to do, and I'm on the waiting list to have my trees pruned. So I'm anxious for all of that to get done so that I can concentrate on the future. And this order is helping me greatly in thinking about the future and making me feel hopeful. This is my Color Blends order of tulip bulbs. I got this last week. If you guys order from Color Blends, and you can go to colorblends.com and place your order still, I think they've still got some available, then you know that they don't ship you or bill you until it's time to plant. Now, I got these last week, but I'll be honest, despite the fact that we had that ice storm, it really has still been very warm here, and traditionally, this is an easy way to remember when to plant your flower bulbs. Traditionally, I plant mine about the week before or 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, and typically by then temperatures have cooled enough, the dirt, the ground, the soil has cooled enough to make it compatible to go ahead and start planting bulbs. So I thought it would be fun to do an unboxing of the myriad of different kinds of tulips that I have. I always recommend that you save your Color Blends catalog, and you can go to colorblends.com and request a catalog, and then you will get, after you place your order, you'll get confirmation. And I always keep this confirmation list. It typically comes in an email form, and that way I can compare it to the order. One year I was missing a whole lot of things, and as it turns out, they were delivered to a house down the street by accident. So I always make sure to open them pretty much immediately after they arrive, go through them, make sure that they're good quality, and that I've gotten what I ordered. So let's do this. Now, there are so many things I love about Color Blends. First of all, I love the fact that the quality of the bulbs is just exceptional. What can I say? Now, I do work with Color Blends. This is a sponsored post, but I have to say that I ordered Color Blends for years before I started working with them. And I have bought thousands of them for years before they started sending me some. So, okay, this is a really fun order because it contains not only tulips, but this contains, look at these. Look at the size of these, you guys. These are, sorry Stuart, I probably put that down before you could take a look at them, but these are Amaryllis bulbs. Look at the size of those things. I am gonna get, I'm sure, maybe 2, 3, maybe even 4 flower stalks out of that. Look at the quality of that bulb. It's incredible. It's almost 5 to 6 inches wide. So I'm going to get these out and separate them because these I'm going to start potting up pretty soon. This is Samba, and the reason that I like to have my catalog right at hand is sometimes I forget what I have ordered and what color things, what color combinations I've ordered, and that right there is Samba. So this way I can reference it, and sometimes I write the page number down on my order. And again, I've got my order here, and they also included one inside this packaging. So number one, how do they come shipped? They come shipped in these wonderful crates. And I keep these and I use these for a myriad of different purposes. I also gift them to a lot of people who like to use them in their garage and things. The other things that I never discard and that I gift to others are these yellow mesh bags, because I wash these and then I use them for produce bags at the grocery store. They work brilliantly. I'm repurposing, recycling something, and they're wonderful. And then I take the tags off and I save these and make sure to mark whatever it is I'm planting, and in this case it will be some of these Amaryllis bulbs. Now Amaryllis, they take a while to flower. A lot of times they will bloom before Christmas, but a lot of times, depending on the variety, they won't bloom till after Christmas, and that's fine with me because I like having that that early spring and that continued beauty after the Christmas tree has been taken down, etc., etc. So this is another variety. This is Double Dream. This is reddish pink with white, and again, these might be even larger than the other ones. I'm not sure. If you'll be patient while I try to open this. Sometimes they knot these up pretty well. And see how wonderful these would be for produce? But these, look at this. This is even bigger than the other ones. Look at those wonderful fleshy roots. And I'll do a video on potting up your Amaryllis. The other thing is, when you unpack them, make sure that they are good, firm, and solid, that they're not mushy. And I don't think I've ever gotten a mushy bulb from Color Blend, so that's wonderful. So I've got this. This is also reddish pink and white, and I like that because they describe what the color palette is on the name of the bulb itself. So this Double Dream is reddish pink and white. Okay, it is going to be just a bonanza of Amaryllis. This is more Double Dream. Put these over here. And I often give these, you guys, as gifts at Christmas time, so that's why I order so many. I also like to plant them not just singularly, but a lot of times I'll plant multiples in one huge dramatic display. So here's more Samba. I used to, when Linda Kavanaugh was still doing Channel 4, she and I used to have Amaryllis races, and we would both plant one at the same time and then see who's bloomed first, and we would have a reveal on camera, and I'm embarrassed to say that most of the time she won, and hers always bloomed faster than mine. Ooh, this one is Double Delicious. It's red with white. Gosh, every time I pull out a different bag, I hadn't really intended to open all of these, you guys, but every time I open another bag, well, I'm going to leave that because it's kind of difficult. But these bulbs, I think, are even larger than the last ones. Stuart, does that look even larger than the other two? I mean, that's like, gosh, 5 going on 6 inches. Okay, so this year, every year I have a subtly different color scheme, but always it's dictated by the colors of my house, the colors that I like, and other things that bloom simultaneously. Now, in the past, that has largely been dictated by the azaleas that I have growing, and they were pinks, whites, and kind of a magenta pink, which meant that I stayed away from any orangey, reddish colors, and I have historically done that, and I did that again this year. This year, however, that entire bed of azaleas was taken down by the ice storm, so I guess it wouldn't have been necessary to do that this year. But in tandem with my friend Sally Ferguson at Color Blends, we came up with a wonderful palette that's going to be pink, white, lavender, little hints of purple, lots of white. It should be beautiful, and they're going to be predominantly mid and late blooming bulbs. And I will show you the technique on how I kind of combine all of them and how I get them in the ground when it's time to actually do that. But right now I am just making sure that they're in good shape. So each bag contains about 100 tulip bulbs. So I can look. This one is very chic. It's pink with green. And after I get finished doing this video, I will make sure that I grab my pen and I mark off each bag to ensure that I got what I ordered. This one is called Purple Lady. And not only does it tell you what color it is, this is purple, but it also tells me when it's going to bloom and the height. So that is pretty wonderful, I think. This one is going to bloom a little bit later. Now, when I say later, for those of us in Oklahoma, in the south, and because I face south, my later blooming tulips will bloom probably earlier than those of you that live further north. And a lot of my late ones begin blooming at the end of March and then go through the first 2 weeks of April. So it kind of depends on weather conditions, it depends on your geography, it depends on the direction that the directional orientation that you plant them in. And for me, my big show is typically towards the end of March and the first part of April. So I have 100 Purple Ladies. I think I counted how many tulips I ordered in all, and it was 1,500. Now, Stuart just gave me a look like, oh my gosh, she is tulip crazed. Most of those will go in the front yard, but not all of them. Some of them will go in the window box. Some of them will go in great big pots. Some of them will go in the back in the potager, so it just kind of depends. Now I also have, and these I have, oh, I didn't even know I was getting these. They must have sent me these to try. Paper white Nur, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but along with my Amaryllis, I will pot this up for the holidays. Now, there's a question always about, I get this every year, what do you do with your tulips after they bloom? And I have always said that most of the time, in most cases, I pull them out and compost them. And it's because for me, tulips don't readily perennialize. They don't readily come back. One woman was appalled when she heard that I did that because apparently in her location they did come back. But even the catalog says that they are not reliably rebloomers. And if you're like me and you're addicted to tulips and you absolutely have to have tulips in your spring garden, I don't want anything iffy. I want to make sure that they come back. And when you're planting bulbs, what you really want to ensure, you guys, is that you plant them in sunlight so that they get adequate sun to bloom, and to the extent possible, you give them good drainage. Now, you're going to ask, okay, in my, well, at least previously shady front yard, how could I do that? Well, remember that deciduous trees lose their leaves in the wintertime. So what had been in shade is going to be in full sun during the growing season when these bulbs are putting on root growth, and also when they're putting on flowers, foliage, and their stalks. So that is something to consider. If it's in deep shade, however, they may not bloom so well. Okay, so here are the big kahunas. These are the ones I can tell that I always get in huge numbers. This is what they call, oh my goodness, there's 300 of these. And there are some price discounts, some quantity discounts on some of these bulbs. It just depends on what they are. But these, I love the terminology and I love the descriptions of the different bulbs. These are called pinotage. And I would say that this is probably my foundational inspiration. This was the first selection that I picked out, and all of the other ancillary bulbs and supplemental bulbs that I picked out related in color, in size, and in form to these pinotage tulips. These are pink, purple, and maroon. They're mid, late to late. So what that means is they will unfold, they'll bloom in color and in timing over an expanse of days, weeks, and months. And I just really love that. So I've got two of these, and so that means I've got 600 total of pinotage. And you guys, if you, obviously next spring I will show you how this all looks, but if you want, sometimes what I like to do is make a mood board, and you can select whatever your tulips are, and then you can cut them out and you can put all the different varieties together to see if it comes up with a pleasing combo for you. And that's kind of what I did this year. Pinotage was my point of inspiration, and then I looked at other varieties that might complement it. So see, there's pinotage right there. And then I selected other varieties. And what I love about this, Stuart, I don't know if people can see, but these have traditional cup-shaped flower forms, but also some lily-shaped flower forms. And I think that's really pretty. And then there's lots of color echoes in there, so I picked up on the white and the pink. So there is that. And I told Stuart he had to move all of these crates out here for me because I started my training sessions this week and I can hardly move. I'm so sore. So I need to get over that before it's time to plant all of these. And you're going to ask, do I plant them all myself? In past years, there have been many years when I planted them all myself. This year, I'll probably get help for multiple reasons because I've got so many. Okay, what are these? Okay, these, you guys, I tried these for the first time last year. This was a new blend last year, and it was absolutely spectacular. So for any of you that want to really play up the white in your gardens, or you want an all green and white garden, or a moonlight garden, this would be a selection for you. These are called Vidal. They're white and white with green. They're early, mid to late. So the whites come out and they pick up the white in the pinotage. They bloom kind of simultaneously and in progression over time. It's fabulous to watch. I grew these in pots last year in addition to in the bed, and they did absolutely beautifully. And I have 500 of these. So I will mark these off of my list. Let me move these out of the way. One more. That probably messed up my mic. Did it? It didn't? Good. Okay, so here's my last batch. And since I'm not going to be planting these for a couple of weeks yet, I keep them in a cool, dark, dry place. So for me, Stuart, if you can show them my front door, there's a little vestibule underneath that steep pitched awning or steep pitched roof. There's a little vestibule when you first go into my house, and that's where I keep them. It's kind of a dark, cool, shady area. Now all of these, I don't even really have to check them out too much because they're all firm, they're all fresh, they're all good quality bulbs. Okay, if you want to, oh, here's more Double Delicious Amaryllis. You guys, this is like Christmas. This is like Christmas. If you want to try something that will really rock your boat, if you have not grown these kinds of Amaryllis, or excuse me, Alliums before, you really need to. Try Alium Schuberti and or Alium Christophi. They have a galactic kind of quality about them. They look like lavender fireworks. They're incredible. They are Dr. Seussish. Kids will absolutely love them. You can grow them in pots. I typically always grow them someplace in my potager, and they're so whimsical, you guys. If you haven't tried them, by all means, try them. They're very, very fun. I love them. I've got lots of Globemaster back there that come up year after year, but these are kind of special friends that I use kind of for a showstopper effect. And then what else do I have here? I have Miss Confection. This is reddish pink and white. There are 100 of these. I have more Miss Confection. And then, and I'm not really sure how I'm going to do these, you guys. I love this Carnegie Hyacinth. These are white, and they're a pure, pure white. They're absolutely gorgeous. I love the way they look when they're blooming, and then there's a little bit of snow on them because it just is so, it's got such a refreshing, really wintry, beautiful winter wonderland look. And these are white. Sometimes I plant these in my window box, but I think this year I'm going to do largely tulips in my window box, pansies, some of my edibles I like to incorporate in there, and I think these might just go in some great big pots, those great big black pots that I told you I saved. Stuart, we need to make sure that we put a link to that video up because this is exactly why I saved those, for purposes just like this. So I may be still very dismayed and saddened about all of my trees, and I'm a little bit intimidated because this is a ton of work to come, but I am also excited, and more importantly, I'm really hopeful about next spring and how this new concoction is going to develop and evolve over time, especially because I'm going to have a lot more light. And I'll talk to you a little bit more extensively about what I'm going to do about the smashed azaleas and some of the other things in another post. But for right now, if you haven't already, go to Color Blends, see what their offerings are, what they still have available, and sometimes later in the season they'll put their things on sale. So take a look, and it looks like I've got my work cut out for me, you guys. I get asked this quite frequently. I think some people might want to copy and replicate exactly what I do each spring in terms of my spring show. And if you want to do the same, well, I'm going to tell you exactly what I ordered on my Color Blends order that I just placed. And I double checked, and as of yesterday at least, all of these are still available. So what was my thought process this year in thinking about the thematic that I wanted to have for the front yard? Well, I wanted to do something a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit less sweet. I talked about it in my Daily Dose of Happiness newsletter yesterday. In the past, I have done lots of roses and kind of peachy reds and sorbet colors. And while I am not going to digress too much from that palette, I am going to make it slightly more elegant, I think, and slightly more sophisticated. So let's get started. To do that, what I am kind of thinking through is relying a little bit more heavily on purples rather than pinks. Now, if you have any kind of blooming shrubs in your landscape that are going to bloom simultaneously with your tulip bulb selections, then keep that in mind, because you want to make sure that they are in the same color palette, that they might have the same kind of warmth or coolness to the colors that you select. In my case, I have some azaleas that bloom kind of a pinky red, a very dark kind of maroonish red, and then also some pale pinks and whites. So I like to pick up on the hues of those blooming azaleas. So, drum roll please, this is what I have ordered for this year, and we're going to put a screenshot this at the end so you guys will know exactly what I ordered and in how many and in what quantities. So I think normally, I think of it this way. I pick my foundation blend. Now this is what I love about Color Blends. They have done all of the work for you. They have put together varieties that will do two things. They bloom over a long period of time. They're not one-shot wonders that bloom in one glorious flush, say in a week or 2 week period of time, and then they're done. These unfold over the course of the spring. Some starting earlier, then there are some mid-bloomers, and then there are some late bloomers within each blend. So that is the brilliance behind selecting a blend versus individual varieties. Now, when I first started to do bulbs, I put together all of my blends myself, being attentive to both of these things. But in this case, they've done the work for you. The second thing that they take into account is the harmony of the different varieties in terms of color, size, height, shape, so that the synergy between each individual variety is just really magnificent. So here you go. My baseline tulip blend was Pinotage, P-I-N-O-T-A-G-E. And this consists of early bloomers, late bloomers, or whatever. All of the details we will put on the screenshot this, but it's a beautiful blend of what I would think of as purples and kind of a pinky purple, some variegated lily-shaped tulips in both those shades and white, and then a good representation of white itself. Now, the other kind of blend is one of my absolute new favorites, and it's one that I have to have every year. All the rest of these are new, and that's Vidal. It's a blend of different kinds of shapes, forms, and bloom times, all of white. So if you're one of those that likes that really sophisticated look of just white and green, Vidal is perfect for you. Somebody emailed me yesterday and was asking about some white blends. So I wholeheartedly recommend that. So Pinotage was my number one. Now what I want to do is then oomph that up with a few more that bloom in different times, early, mid, and late. So then I've selected some that are just solid. So it's one that's already included in the blend, but it will very much harmonize with the Pinotage. So I am also planting some Misconfection, I told you about the Vidal, some Purple Ladies, and Stuart's going to put individual shots of all of these up so you can see what they look like in isolation. This is one I haven't tried before. I believe it's Verishik. I might be pronouncing that wrong. It's kind of in a pinky purple and green, and those are the ones that I'm really going to concentrate on. Now, I also will take that into account in what I plant in my window box, which right now is filled with caladiums, but this fall will be filled with tulip bulbs, so that the plantings on the porch mimic the plantings out in the garden. So I might have pots. Last year I did lots in containers, and I had this wonderful montage tapestry of different bulbs and flowers blooming simultaneously on the front porch. So I'm taking all of that into consideration. Now, those are my tulips. I also ordered some hyacinths, some alliums, some amaryllis, and I will also put that on the screenshot this so you'll know exactly which of those bulbs I am also trying out this year. So all of these are new to me. I intentionally did that, except for the Vidal, which is all white. The rest of these are new to me. I like that, as I said in my newsletter yesterday. Sometimes you have to try new things to continually get that rush. I might like it more, I might like it less, but no matter what, it will be equally beautiful, I'm sure, very dramatic, and hopefully get me that more sophisticated, elegant quality that I want. So if you wanted to know exactly what Linda Vaughter is planting this spring, you alone on LVTV have the inside scoop. Well, normally when I do my bulb planting, it's done in one day in moss. I get them all in the ground, and I don't have to do a lot to prep the beds beforehand. But now, because of all of this, I'm having to change my strategy. So what I'm doing is just working on one area at a time, and I'm kind of following the guidance of my Color Blends catalog, because in there, and I did a video on what all bulbs I ordered from Color Blends this year, and in the catalog, and you can order one if you don't have one, it shows how to plant 100 bulbs in 30 minutes. So instead of doing all of my bulb planting in one fell swoop, I think I am just going to tackle it one section at a time, because there are areas that just need to be cleared of this debris before I can even plant them. So that I feel like I'm getting some stuff done, I am going to go ahead and tackle it one bed at a time. So what I've got is this area right here. And I always plant tulips in here, but there's also little seedlings and things, and there's also some perennials in here that needs to be cut back. So here's my strategy, what I'm going to do. Number one, I watered this area really, really well, because despite the recent rain we had, it's still extraordinarily dry. And part of that was because it was under the canopy of these big trees. Now, if I try to look on the bright side, one thing is, since there won't be as much canopy, it will be easier for any rainfall that comes down to penetrate the soil of the garden beds below the trees. So that's one good thing. but we haven't had any rain. So what I did was just after, I should say first things first. First of all, I raked away the leaves in this area, or I blew them away with my litho blower that I love. I'll put a link to it below. And I'm clearing this of leafy debris. Now, once the bulbs are in the ground, I don't care if more leaves fall on top of them, but I removed the leaves for two different reasons. Because number one, I'm going to really deep water this area. And so I have out, I've told you guys about it before, one of these tiny little sprinkler heads, inexpensive sprinkler heads, and I put it on, and I have just really deep watered this entire area. And I did that for two different reasons. One, because I have some destroyed boxwoods in here. So here's one. Stuart, if you can show this one. Some of them I am keeping, and some of them I'm taking out. So this boxwood here, you can see it has some damage on the back side and some broken branches, but nevertheless, most of it is intact. This one is pretty much a goner, and it doesn't serve its purpose anymore in the design. So to make it easier to dig out, that's one of the reasons that I watered this area. I am also going to be cutting back some of the perennials in here, and you can see from the circumference of this, I think it's a lavage. This, by the way, is a plant. I have no idea where it came from. It just kind of planted itself there. It appeared. I don't recall ever planting it, but it turned out to be a beautiful plant that has gorgeous foliage, and it puts out a pretty purpley blue bloom in the spring. So this is a large plant that takes up a good bit of real estate in this bed. By cutting this back, I should have my pruners with me and I don't. But you can see that by cutting this back, I can expose all sorts of planting area underneath here. And let me try to get down. And let me tell you guys, as an aside, I worked out with my trainer this week, and I am so sore I can hardly bend down. So I just had to share that with you if I look awkward bending down or coming back up. But you can see under here, see all of that surface area that I've now exposed? That is prime territory for planting tulip bulbs. If I just left it covered like this, then I would think that something was growing there, and I would think I only had this portion in which to plant. But no, I have a lot more room than that. So I'm going to cut this back. It's a perennial. I can safely do that. It doesn't need to keep on its foliage over the winter to protect the root ball. And this will give me a lot more space to plant bulbs in here. And another reason that I want to saturate this area is because it kind of provides a little bit more contrast for me to see some things. And some of the things that I'm looking for down in here are seedlings, because I don't want to disrupt some of these seedlings if they are seedlings that I want to keep for my spring show as I'm planting bulbs. So I can be on the lookout for them. And this area also, I know that I've got, like here is a tiny little foxglove right there. And I think, oh yes, look over here. There are some other seedlings that I'm going to kind of expose to the sunlight. They will grow up and they'll be a little bit more prominent. And I just want to pay attention to them. If they're seedlings I want to keep and be part of the fall show, then I can see them more easily now that I have wet this bed and there's a little bit more contrast. So I'm going to keep all of that in mind before I start digging. And I think that's really, really helpful. And you can see over here, I've got some columbine seedlings. There's a columbine seedling there. And I've got some more foxglove over here. And all of this, by the way, I think is going to do better with more sunlight. So I'm exposing this area, and then in this space right in here, if you could kind of pan it, Stuart, this space here is where I'm going to start my bulb planting. And as I actually do it, I will demonstrate what my technique is to most efficiently plant bulbs, at least in this space. So I hope that was helpful, and it gives you a little bit of information on the rationale and the methodology of how I decide what to plant where in terms of bulb planting.
Merry Christmas!
You guys, I have been having so much fun playing with these Amaryllis bulbs. I just put together this wonderful centerpiece. It's going to be the third variety of Amaryllis compositions that I have put together for you guys. And I want you to let me know of these free different Brex Amaryllis bulbs arrangements. Which one is your favorite? So that's my question of the day, and hang on to the end because I'll show you how to put this one together. Well, I have grown and gifted, I think, hundreds of Amaryllis bulbs over the year. This year I'm partnering with Brex, and I ordered I don't know how many to give as gifts. And I have 3 really fun ideas for you guys. I'm so excited about it, and I can't tell you how much fun I had playing with these little stories that I'm kind of putting together using Brex bulbs and some of the things that I've ordered from them. So this inspiration came from this climbing Santa. I think he is so cute. Now Santa can climb. You can get an angel that climbs or an elf that climbs. And what it does, it's twofold. It's obviously darling, but it also serves as a support for your Amaryllis bulb. Now you can get whatever color you want. You can get the standard red, or you can get some bicolored. But for me, what's important about this is that it is going to get children excited about gardening. And I have 2 new daughter-in-laws, and I'm starting to think about great gift ideas and great fun projects to do with future grandchildren, hopefully, and this is one of them. So I just kind of went bonkers with this. So I got a bulb that's potted up, and children will just thrill at seeing its progress, because once it starts, it will grow as much as an inch a day, depending on conditions. So this one, I believe, is just a solid red one, and I have put in place this charming little ladder. Now when you get it, you can get it as a set from Brex, and I got the climbing Santa. So Santa can climb on whatever level you choose. He's got these sweet little hooked hands, and he can climb along with the ladder. And it might be a fun thing to do, to let the kiddos do, that Santa progresses up the ladder as not only the Amaryllis grows, but as Christmas gets a little bit closer too. So in this little storybook that I've put together with the ladder and the Santa as a foundation, how fun would it be for a child to style this during the holidays? So with the ladder in place and Santa, I came up with this whole thematic of Santa hanging Christmas lights on this little ladder. And I got some of these tiny little fairy lights that you can get really inexpensively. And you can see I've got some around the perimeter, and I thought it would kind of the kids could pretend like they were hanging the lights around the edge and use little wooden toothpicks that they could decorate themselves. You can sometimes buy them already decorated. I've got one here, a prized possession of mine. When my children were in kindergarten, and yours may be too, they made these little these little clothespin reindeers and clothespin characters. So that can secure the lights around the edge. And then Santa is being very, very careful as he strings the lights and hangs the wreath on top of this darling ladder that you can get at Breck's. Now, Santa is my chosen character, but if you chose an elf or you choose an angel, then obviously your little playthings around creating your story might be different. But it would be so fun for a child to style this and let their imagination go wild, all with the Amaryllis bulb as a foundation, watching it grow. And this is one of those kinds of things that will continue not only throughout the holiday season, but maybe into January. So this is all you'll need. You'll need an Amaryllis bulb. You can get one of many, many varieties at Breck's. They come packed in this, planted in this seltzer. You can get the ladder and the little character, plus any little toys or ornaments or little Christmas decorations that you choose to decorate around your Amaryllis. And then obviously you're going to need some of these little fairy lights. So it doesn't take much to create a whole theme and create your own really magical story. So get your kids involved early on, get them started out in the way they should grow as being good gardeners with an Amaryllis for the holidays. So that's my style number 1 of holiday Amaryllis gifting. Let's look at my next arrangement. Well, this gift idea reminds me of my friend Mo, who every year all of her Christmas decorating was in very simple, beautiful red and white. So for her, I have selected the Amaryllis Magical Touch. It has red blooms with white edges. And what I'm going to do is just give her a now and later kind of gift. So she's a good gardener. She knows how to pot up her own Amaryllis in whatever her container of choice is. She'll have this to look forward to in January. So I'm going to tuck this sweet bulb inside this muslin bag that is hanging on a little basket. That's the now, and the Amaryllis bulb will be the later, and I've put my own little gift card on it. These are some winter berries, and then I've decorated it with just a couple of little felt characters and a bottle brush tree. Now, in addition to the Amaryllis bulb and the little winter berries, I tucked them all in one of my QVC baskets for a little special personal touch from me this year. And then I've put a planting guide in here, and I've also put one of these really indispensable stakes that supports the Amaryllis. You can get this from Breck's too, and as it grows, it supports the really sometimes top-heavy stalks with the flowers and also some of the foliage. So I'm tucking one of those in there as well. And to make it a little bit more all-year practical, I've also put in a sweet little red and white detail of a tea towel that makes it that much more festive, I think. And then I've adorned it with some of her classic red and white stripe and red and white polka dot ribbon that she uses in all of her holiday decor. So I think this is really a cute idea. So again, what you need is any kind of basket, your now plant, whether that's these winter berries, a little fern, almost anything, whatever your Amaryllis bulb is of choice, one of these stakes from Breck's, I'm getting my words tumbled, stakes from Breck's, a planting guide, and then just put it all together, dressed out and adorned in a really festive way. And there is your number 2 way to gift an Amaryllis bulb from Breck's. Well, this may be the most dramatic centerpiece that you can put together in 5 minutes or less, probably even 3 minutes or less. Now, the inspiration for this was twofold. One, I wanted obviously the Amaryllis to be the star of the show and something that would endure through the holidays and after. But also, it was inspired by the fact that for many, many years, I spent Christmas by myself. When I was a student, when I was a graduate student, my family lived far away, and it was just kind of a lonely time. Well, if you know a student or someone who might be housebound or infirmed, or for whatever reason, they can't find it easy to decorate, then I would suggest putting together this tableau. Now, all you'll need is some kind of container. Now, in my case, I used a footed basket. This one I happened to get at a thrift store, but you could use any kind of footed vase, a cake stand. For that matter, you could just use a plate. It doesn't have to be anything fancy or expensive. So first of all, you're going to need a container. Then I just went to my grocery store and they had live wreaths. So I got one of their live wreaths. I soaked it for about 20 minutes in my bathtub, let it dry, and then all I did was center it over the basket, and it was the perfect circumference for this container and would be the perfect circumference for practically any standard size plate. So that gave me all of the greenery. So what I love is that the components of this are kind of like Christmas decorating in one container. So you could take it apart, you could take all of the fruit and put it in a separate bowl, and that would encourage those graduate students or those college students to eat healthy. Plus, I think fruit is just inherently beautiful. Put them in a bowl with the pine cones, which is another there for the taking kind of free gift from Mother Nature, which would make a beautiful arrangement. They could take the wreath off, hang it on their door, and then they have this beautiful amaryllis to enjoy throughout the holidays. Now they can enjoy it all together like this as a centerpiece for their table, or they can deconstruct it and use it throughout their apartment or their room. Now the added touch that makes it really, really magical, you guys, are these little fairy lights. I buy these in quantity around the holidays, and they're battery operated, and I just tuck them in wherever they need to be for just a little bit of extra sparkle, extra magic. When they're finished, they can hang them on their bulletin board, they can weave them around a frame or anything. But I think that this Christmas in a basket is just a really wonderful way to gift the queen of what I think, the queen of Christmas, which are these gorgeous amaryllis bulbs. This one is already potted up and about in bloom, but if you didn't want to pot one up, if you didn't even want to go to that much trouble, then Brex also has these no water waxed flowers in the wax casing. And look, this one is already erupting with two big stalks. So you could just put that in the center and then they could enjoy watching it grow. And talk about minimal, that is, like I say, 5 or 3 minutes or less. All you'll need is the container, a wreath. It can be faux or real. I like the real ones. Grab yourself some pine cones, get some fruit of your choice, and then place the amaryllis bulb in the center. And by the way, this also has one of those stakes that comes from Brex to support the amaryllis stalks as they grow. So there you go, a really, really dramatic centerpiece, compliments of me and Brex. And I hope you guys will check out their catalog. I just got mine and they still have really great availability on different things. So if you still are in need of some holiday gifts for really before or after the holidays, I like to pot some up so I'll have them for Valentine's Day and kind of fill that gloomy void right after Christmas when you take the tree down. Then by all means, you might want to order some amaryllis from Brex. And I hope that you will let me know if you try one of these arrangements for someone in your life. Well, it's been a long time since we've done an FAQ Friday, and all of those questions are starting to stack up. So I thought we'd kind of do a lightning round, and I would answer some of the questions that I've been getting over and over again in recent posts. And Stuart has kind of compiled a list, so he's going to give me the buzzword, and I'm going to answer those questions.
Garden furniture.
Garden furniture. Okay, I have two, or my wooden garden furniture in particular is what you guys ask about. These small wooden chairs that kind of float outside in my backyard are from a company called Tidewater. If you just Google like Tidewater bench, it's inexpensive wood, but I've had these for years. I did put kind of a finish on them. They've lasted for a long time, but it's a really good inexpensive option if you want wooden benches or wooden chairs. The ones in the front are teak, and they were from Smith & Hawkins years ago.
Do you post every day?
We do try to post almost every day, with the exception of disastrous weather events like the ice storm we had recently. If some of you are unhappy that we don't like show a close-up of something you won, or you don't think the production quality is absolutely wonderful, it's because we really try to show you what's going on in my gardening life in real time. So these are the projects that I'm working on. So occasionally the conditions won't be great, the sun won't be just right, there'll be power equipment in the back, but we just do the best we can do so that we can get you a post every day so you can kind of know in real time what's going on in the garden.
When to plant bulbs?
When to plant bulbs. Normally, I would start planting them now, and I'm on the cusp of starting to plant them. But typically, I do it 2 weeks or 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. You can plant them all the way up until the end of December pretty successfully here in Oklahoma. It has been so warm, with the exception of that freak ice storm we had. I don't think, Stuart, have we had another freeze since then. It has been inordinately warm. I'm in shirt sleeves today. So typically I wait till just right before Thanksgiving. If you're confused, just find out what your zone is. You can find that anywhere online or in the Color Blends catalog. It will tell you when to plant for your zone.
Sold out?
Apparently, this is why I always encourage people to order their flower bulbs really early in the year. I order mine as early as July or August because your favorite varieties will often get sold out. So if I have showed you some of the ones that I'm using and they're sold out, what I typically do is just ask them to make another recommendation on a blend that they might have that's still in stock, or basically just ask them what they still have available. It's a fun way to be kind of surprised and just try something maybe you haven't tried in the past. I get this a lot. Have I ever written, will I be writing a book? And I have kind of toyed with this idea for years. As you can imagine, it's a lot of work, but I do think I'm going to be signing a contract to write a book in the next year, and I'll keep you posted as a little bit more information comes out. It will be about things, obviously garden related, that I'm passionate about. Yeah, this is a very specific question I wanted to answer because I showed you how I put some of my smaller topiaries back outside to get more sunlight and more humidity, and someone asked why didn't I use drip irrigation. Well, number one, these pots are really, really small and I've got tons of them, so I would have to have a drip irrigation line all over the place. It's much more efficient to just water them. Also, drip irrigation sometimes doesn't moisten the pot regularly. I also are kind of equally around the root ball. So I have found that it works a little bit better in the summer for large pots, but on my smaller pots, I just water those by hand and I have a little bit more control.
When to plant pansies?
A lot of you have probably already planted your pansies, and that's fine. You can plant them as soon as the weather gets kind of reliably cool. Some people who have planted theirs, and even those pansies that I have that are still in the flats waiting to be planted, have already gotten kind of leggy. So I'm going to pinch those back. I typically don't install my pansies and my violas until after I have my tulips in, because I don't want them to be crushed in the process of planting my tulips. But you definitely can go ahead and plant them now along with your snapdragons, maybe some alyssum and other cool season annuals you might want in your garden.
Pruning evergreens.
Pruning evergreens. as you know, since I do so much clipped boxwood, I'm kind of constantly pruning evergreens. Right now I'm not doing that so much because I want whatever new growth comes out to have a chance to harden off before it gets cold. A cold blast can really kind of burn the new tender foliage that comes out. But once things kind of go dormant right around Christmas time, that's a great time to prune your evergreens, because then you can bring the prunings, like from, if you'd show my arborvitae over here, Stuart, my arborvitae, some of my other things, including some of my boxwood and junipers and such. That's when I like to prune them, and my hollies, because then I can bring that greenery in and I can use them for the holidays.
Damaged boxwood.
Okay, a lot of you, this is kind of a big question, have asked, what about my boxwood that was damaged in the recent ice storm? And I'm going to do a video on that, but I basically attack it in 3 ways. I just will keep them there, prune them in the spring in a better shape and allow them to recover. I might cut them back hard, but I also might try to kind of support them in a way with some twine, but I'll do a video on that to show what I'm doing to recapture the beauty of my boxwood balls in the front. Euonymus. What was the question about that? I can't remember what the question was.
So we'll move on. Clay?
Clay. Yeah, a lot of people ask, how do I grow things if I have such terrible soil? Because I'm always talking about my terrible soil. Well, number one, I try to do like you do. I amend with lots of compost and leaves and other organic matter. But I also typically try to find plants that are adaptable to clay soil. So a good example would be, I just did a project with the Dragon Prince Cryptomeria from Southern Living. On the tag it says can adapt to most any soil. So if you found any plant that says it can adapt to almost any soil conditions, that's a plant you might want to add to your landscape.
Squirrels.
Squirrels. If you have followed me for any length of time, you know that squirrels are my nemesis, my arch rivals. Interestingly, while they dig up lots of my seedlings, they don't bother my big mounds of bulbs, my big holes that I fill with tulip bulbs in the fall for spring bloom. Maybe 1 or 2 here or there, but for the most part, they kind of just leave them alone. And I don't have much of a problem with rabbits or deer. I do live in the inner city, so I don't have some of those country kinds of pests that you may have. But yes, squirrels are always an issue, but for some reason, they kind of seem to leave my tulips alone. That said, if you have a real problem with squirrels eating your tulips, then you might want to try daffodils or something that they don't find so tasty.
What is a 4-season plant and where do you get it?
Okay, when I say, someone asked me, what do I mean when I say 4-season interest? And that is pretty much a plant that just looks good throughout the 4 seasons. So for example, boxwood, they look beautiful in the spring when they set out that pretty new growth. They've got strong architectural form in the summer. They obviously look beautiful in the fall, and then in the winter they're evergreen and they look beautiful. Likewise, something like an oak leaf hydrangea. I love the bark and the twigginess and the dried flower heads, so it's beautiful in the wintertime. It's gorgeous when it erupts and the buds break in the spring. It's beautiful in the summertime, obviously, when it blooms, and then its foliage turns a gorgeous rusty orange shade in the fall. So it too has 4 seasons of bloom, or 4 seasons of interest. So that's pretty much, I mean, it kind of holds its good looks over 4 seasons.
Facebook group.
Facebook group. A lot of you have asked about my Facebook group, and I do have a Facebook group. It's for LV Insiders. If you're a member of LV TV and you are it's $9.99 a month. We may be examining that in the future because so many people have shown interest in being a part of the Facebook group. But if you're a member of LV TV, you also get a membership to the LV Insider Facebook group, and you get a kind of a daily newsletter on recommendations and life musings from me. But stay tuned as we kind of try to navigate through COVID and some other things that are going on. That might change, and we might try to open it up a bit more to others. Any more questions? Have I exhausted my list? Okay, so for right now, if you've got any questions, just shoot them to me. And it's hard for me to answer every individual comment, but I'll do the best I can. Just comment below, ask me what your questions are, and we'll try to put them on our FAQ list for next time. Thanks, you guys. Well, Thanksgiving is behind us and Christmas looms in the future. So let's get started with some holiday gardening and seasonal decorating. I want you guys to do it along with me. You know, I plant tulips, I plant daffodils, I plant alliums, but probably the most dramatic thing I plant, and maybe for you too, are Amaryllis bulbs. They're absolutely glorious, dramatic, magnificent. There is no superlative, I don't think, that does not apply to Amaryllis. So let's plant some up. I do it every year, so I may give you a glimpse in this show of some of them that I have planted and kind of composed in the past, and some of the unique ways that you too can style them for your holiday decorating. Now let's get started. Well, it wouldn't be the holidays if I didn't pot up some Amaryllis bulbs, and I am doing that today with some fabulous Color Blends Magnum bulbs, and these are huge. They're absolutely gorgeous, and this is one of those cases, as you guys probably know, that size matters, and you want to get the biggest Amaryllis bulb you can if you want to get real drama from it. So that's one of the reasons I like to get them from Color Blends. Now, for me, Amaryllis are all about drama, and typically I like to plant them in multiples, though sometimes I plant them singularly in each pot. But I have this fabulous brass urn, metal urn, that my friend Nev gave me, and very happily, serendipitously, I also have all sorts of these plastic pots that fit in here perfectly. The top of the pot is flush with the top of the urn. So I just potted up a bunch of tulip bulbs that I'm going to be forcing for next spring to put in this same urn in some of these same pots. But for now, I am going to press this urn into service with Amaryllis. So I've started potting up two of them in one of these plastic pots. And by the time they bloom, this is going to be just beyond spectacular. Now, probably you guys already know how to pot up Amaryllis. First of all, you just really want to get a good quality bulb, and I have absolutely done that. And you can, guys, you can get these. By the way, I think at Color Blends they still have some available and they're 20% off. You guys might want to check out their site. But I will get them from just about anywhere, whether it's retail or online, as long as they're good quality and the colors that I want. Now this mangum is in a deep red, but I have some other varieties in a really gorgeous pink called Lagoon that I'm going to show you a little bit later. Now, one thing when I select bulbs that I always try to do is find one, this is kind of a cheat, try to find one that looks like it's already got a stalk that's beginning to erupt out of the bulb itself. And this one in particular has a stalk. You can just see the tip of it, and it's starting to project its little head out of the top of the bulb. Now, ideally, I thought I would probably put 3 in this pot, but these bulbs are so large that I'm only going to be able to get 2. And though 3 is typically my number, I think 2 is still going to give me a fabulous display and probably an odd number of stalks, because these are going to, in all likelihood, put out multiple stalks. So I have put in, probably 5 to 6 inches of potting soil. This is just a good potting soil blend. And I think this is Stay Green. Since I'm doing this inside, in front of the fireplace, I've got my bag in another tote bag so I don't get dirt all over the place. And then I'm just going to top this off a little bit, but not with too much, because I don't want too much of the shoulders of these bulbs, and that's what they're called, is the shoulders of these bulbs, to be buried. At least a third, sometimes even a half, of the bulb to be exposed. And you guys have probably seen them where they jump the gun and they're already blooming, even in the crate or in the package that you sometimes see them in the store. You can also even grow these in water, though I find them most beautiful when planted in a garden-like fashion in a pot. Now, I'm going to top dress this in a different way a little bit later, and I'll show you some of my favorite top dressings. But one thing that I typically do like to do, and that is put my supports in for those big stalks sooner rather than later. Now, I use all different kinds of things. Sometimes I will use bamboo stakes and I can put them in kind of a tripod fashion. Sometimes I will use really beautiful sticks or pieces of wood that I have foraged out from my garden or in the woods, preferably with a little bit of lichen on them or something, and with an interesting contour and interesting lines. So it can be something natural, it can be something not natural, like or kind of natural, like this bamboo. Stuart, I guess bamboo is natural, is it not? It is. And if you grow bamboo, you know you will have lots of bamboo stems. But you can also get something like this, and I got these off of Amazon last year, and you can put these in place and they will help support that heavy stalk and even some of the floppy leaves once they start coming up. Now, you can put these on now, or you could put them on once the stalks start to come out of the bulb itself. And these I can put at 2 different heights to accommodate different heights of stems, different heights of leaves, or whatever. And remember, these are in short order going to be obscured by the foliage of not only the stalk and the leaves, but how I top dress them. Okay, now let's talk about really making them fabulous and especially celebratory for the holidays. Now, the thing about Amaryllis is they they can be a little bit obstinate. You're never really sure when they're going to bloom if you're trying to time that specifically for the holidays, which is one of the reasons that I try to do that cheat and make sure that I've got a stem coming out when I select my bulbs. But a lot of that will depend on what variety you plant. So in my experience, the ones that are in the pink range, they tend to bloom earlier. In the red range, like Red Lion and some of the other classic bicolored ones, those bloom a little bit later and around Christmas. And then some of them, the ones that are white or tend to be kind of in coral apricot colors, to me, in my experience, yours may be different, and that's my question of the day. What has been your experience with the timing of your Amaryllis? Most of mine bloom in white and coral. They'll bloom a lot later, sometimes even into the new year. Now, of course, if you save your bulbs, sometimes you will find that if you plant them up in big pots like I did last year. Stuart, do you remember when I did that? When I potted a bunch of them in some great big terracotta pots, and they bloomed outside in the spring in magnificent fashions. So I've got my Amaryllis potted up in here, and now obviously, I want them to bloom as quickly as possible, and to do that, I want to expose them to some kind of heat. So for me, sometimes I'll kind of keep them in front of my fireplace, or I'll keep them in a pretty warm area. As soon as I see them doing anything at all, I will take them away from that heat, and then I'll put them in a bright location. I have discovered that as many different kinds of people as there are different ways that people try to grow their Amaryllis. This is just my technique. You undoubtedly have yours. So once I get them potted up, I have watered them, and I'll keep an eye on them in a bright place. Now, I always typically like to dress them up in some fashion. I seldom ever just leave them in the pot like this with just the bare earth exposed. And for just a couple of different reasons, but one, because they are such a holiday plant, I really want to make sure that I maximize their beauty and their impact by adorning them in different kind of ways specific to either the season or the holiday itself. Now, I went outside this morning and I just clipped a whole bunch of things. Some Nandina berries, Nandina foliage, I've got some privet here, I've got some arborvitae, and what this does is not only adorn your container, but it also can provide some additional support for the stalks when they come up. Now here is a little tip. I used to do this. For example, if I had this out and I was using it on a table and I wanted it to go ahead and look pretty even before it was in bloom, then I would zhuzh it up with some of these this foraged greenery and these foraged vines, or I would mulch it with pine cones or something. But now I find that I do that a little bit later. And why? It's because I don't want to do it twice. I want the greenery to stay fresh, because if I did it now, chances are in my dry indoor air, I would have to constantly kind of replenish it or replace it so that it continually looked fresh. Now I just wait until it looks like they're really coming into bloom before I do this additional layering and impact. So here's a couple of different ideas for you. Sometimes the most common things, Stuart, I'm going to make a big mess here. You don't care because I'll be cleaning it up. Oops, we've got foliage down. Foliage down, Stuart. Okay, so sometimes the most common things are the most fun. This is just common privet, and I am removing some of the bottom foliage. And remember, I'm going to wait to insert this probably, after they are at least 6 inches tall and they're really starting to already make themselves known. But I can take this privet, I can then use it almost as if I was using it in a cut flower arrangement, and I would split it up the stalk with just some secateurs or some scissors or something. And then I can put this in place, position it accordingly. I can put that in place, And because it's got a strong stem, that will not only be attractive, but it will also support the heavy stalk. I could put multiple stems of this privet in here and I could have it look, I guess, kind of cohesive and all in the same language. But let's say that I wanted to use a different type of foliage. And by the way, once I put this privet in place, then I could do things like mulch it in tiny lady's apples or clementines or pine cones, and I would have both the greenery and the things, the top dressing to really make it look fabulous. I could also tuck in some berries to give it a little jolt of color, or if I wanted a jolt of color, immediately I could do something like take a branch, a fairly straight branch. In this case, this is a clipping from my Foster holly out front. I'm going to treat it just the same. And I am going to slice it up so that it will have some kind of hydration and moisture uptake from the soil itself. And then I can put that in place. It almost looks like a small tree. And then when this red amaryllis blooms, it's going to be really, really fabulous. And then I can just torque this branch in one way or another according to the growth pattern of the amaryllis itself. Now, I can do that. I could then subsequently come in here and add some more greenery like this to do a skirt around the edge. Stuart, you and I have done this before for many times, and you can come in and whatever kind of greenery you have, whether it's arborvitae, whether it's a pine, whether it's yew, boxwood, whatever, you can come in and you could put a skirt around this and it would be beautiful. And if you wanted it to glisten, you could even put a few scattered silver ball ornaments or something like that in. But if I wanted it to be more low growing, then I could, instead of getting a vertical branch of holly, I could get something like this that was more horizontal, and I could use some of that gorgeous nandina. I could take out these supports, put this in place, and it would almost look as if this nandina, in fact, I'll just go ahead and do that. It would also almost look as if this nandina was growing out of the pot. And nandina, the nice thing about it is, even though, again, I'm not going to insert this until the amaryllis is tall, but I have found that nandina will stay fresh for a pretty long time, and even when it begins to dry, it's still beautiful. And then you've got those gorgeous pendulous berries that cascade over the side. Do you like that, Stuart?
I do.
And you can just add more according to your taste. And then if I wanted to do more layering, because I'm always about layering, then I could come in here and I could add some traditional conifer greenery if I wanted. And you would have an absolutely magnificent centerpiece for your dining room table, for your sideboard, for your entryway. And obviously, as Christmas approaches and I begin to decorate these, I will show you how I do it. But this kind of gives you some ideas of things that you can use from your own garden to top dress it. Now, if you want to be really traditional, and I think very, very elegant, I'll show you another option. Now, probably one of the most elegant and maybe the most traditional top dressings for your amaryllis, or really any of your holiday plants, is to just use preserved moss. Or it can be live moss if you've got an ethical place from which you can source it. I often save mine from one year to the next. One tip, you want to make sure you hydrate it first. Get it really, really wet, because not only will that make it fresher, whoops, will that make it fresher, but it also helps you put it in place and helps you mold it around the bulbs that much more easily. So I think for these, I'm going to just top dress some of these smaller pots in it. Now here's something else that's kind of fun, Stuart, and I remember doing this many, many years ago, and after I thought it up myself, I saw it in Martha Stewart magazine, so I felt validated. I felt validated. And that was, I took my pots of, and for this treatment, I typically use colors that look a little springier. So I'm going to do this around my pots that are planted in Lagoon, which I believe is that really deep pink. And that is to spread some ryegrass seed. This is a perennial ryegrass, and you just sprinkle it. I'm not going to do it because these are red, but you just sprinkle it across the surface. You don't even have to bury it. Just sprinkle it across the surface, kind of slough it in, and then keep it moist just with a mister or something, because you don't want to overwater the amaryllis bulb. Put it in a bright location in the sun and it will germinate. The seeds will germinate almost immediately, and then it looks like your amaryllis is growing out of a green, lush lawn. I have done that many, many times. Obviously, you could also use things like pine cones in their natural state, or spray painted. I have done that many times. You could use, if you were doing lots of pomanders, you could do all sorts of different clove-studded citrus, and you could mulch it with that. You could use acorns. You could use ornaments. You could use whatever you want. Give me some of your suggestions. I typically like to go a little bit au natural, but start thinking about what you have in your own gardens right now, what you have available to you. Look for beauty everywhere, wherever you can find it, and really recognize its potential to dress up your gorgeous amaryllis and holiday plants for Christmas.